Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Happy Chanukah. Welcome. Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. We bring you greetings of welcome. We start tonight with a reading by my colleague, Rabbi Miriam Jairus. We join tonight to reaffirm our connection to the Jewish people. At this time of transition from our everyday week to the experience of Shabbat, we turn from the concerns of the outside world and become quiet and peaceful. At this moment in time, we are, across the internet, a community of believers dedicated to bringing light where there is darkness. The light of day decreases minute by minute and day by day as we approach the winter solstice. Gathering tonight with our congregational family, we ward off the darkness of the night and the chill of the season to feel the warmth of the gathering, a gathering that hopefully next year will be in person. Let us pause, take a deep breath wherever you are, and begin this journey of Shabbat, the celebration of Chanukah. Traditionally, one lights the Chanukah menorah before the Shabbat candles, but we're not traditional. And because tonight we're emphasizing Chanukah, we're going to light the Shabbat candles first. I'll ask Arthur to take care of that task as we sing that blessing. Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Baruch haor ba'shalom, Bashalom, Bashalom, Baruch haor ba'Shabbat. That, of course, is the traditional tune for the Chanukah, and we'll now light the Chanukah. Just for those of you doing it at home, you load the new ones from, as you're facing it, your right to left, and you light the newest one, which is this one, first. These candles we now light, bringing brightness to the night. Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Baruch haor b'Chanukah. We pause for a moment in our readings as we listen to this beautiful song sung by Stefan Kukuruga in Yiddish and in English, O Chanukah, O Chanukah. Number 2. The world is a place of wonder. Whenever we pause to consider our surroundings, we find that it has changed, if only a little, or I should probably add in these days, quite a lot. During this time of year, changes come to our days and our nights. The chill of fall is slowly giving way to the cold of winter. Long sunny days have been replaced by long winter nights. Now darkness comes all too quickly, before life's joys and day's pleasures are complete. The cold skies of winter can make us feel sad, even and especially now, lonely. Yet if we think about it, we see that there can be happiness too. This is why we are delighted that Chanukah is here. Chanukah reminds us that we can bring the light and warmth of happiness out of darkness and cold. We continue now with Chanukah, Chanukah, Chag Yafeh Kol Kach.
Chanukah, Chanukah, Chag Yafeh Kol Kach, Or Haviv Misaviv, Il est Yeled Ra. Chanukah, Chanukah, Sevevon Sof Sof, Sof Sof Sof, Sof Sof Sof, Manayim Vatov. Chanukah, Chanukah, En Chalon Bli Yesh, Levevot Sufganiyot Bechol Bayit Yesh. Chanukah, Chanukah, Chag Haviv Meod, שירו נא, זמרו נא וצריקות. חנוכה, חנוכה, חג יפה כל כך, אור חביב מסביב, כי לילד רך. חנוכה, חנוכה, סבבון סוף סוף, סוף סוף סוף, סוף סוף סוף, מה נעים וטוב. חנוכה, חנוכה, חג יפה כל כך, אור חביב מסביב, כי לילד רך. חנוכה, חנוכה, סבבון סוף סוף, סוף סוף סוף, סוף סוף סוף, מה נעים וטוב.
Light is the sign and condition of life. Light is the goal of our days. At birth, we emerge from darkness to a light so dazzling that at first we cannot see. But as the eye adjusts, we learn that merely to see is not always to understand. Illumination is not enough. To understand, we need enlightenment. We need enlightenment, an inner light whose fuel derives from wells of wisdom. Should time or truth exhaust one source of knowledge, we must find another. Ours is an endless challenge. To search out wisdom from its hidden depths, that it may brighten and enlighten our lives. We continue now with Afo Ori. A candle is a small thing, but one candle can light another. See how its own light increases as a candle gives its flame to the other. We, too, are lights. Light is the power to dispel darkness. We have the power to move back the darkness in ourselves and in others. To do so with the light created when one mind illuminates another, when one heart kindles another, when one person strengthens another. And its flame enlarges within us as we pass it on. Throughout history, children of darkness have tried to smother this passage of light from one person to another. Throughout history, tyrants, large and small, have tried to darken, diminish, and separate people by force or by fear. But always, in the end, they fail. For always, somewhere in the world, the light remains, ready to burn its brightest where it is dark. And every free people has remained free by resisting those who would extinguish in people the light of freedom, of love, of truth. We continue with this beautiful song, Banu Choshech.
בנו חושך לגרש, בידינו אור ואש, כל אחד הוא אור קטן, וכולנו אור איתן, צורה חושך חלש חור, צורה מפני האור, צורה חושך חלש חור, צורה מפני האור, בנו חושך לגרש, החושך הלשחור, סורה מפני האור, סורה חושך הלשחור, סורה מפני האור.
Happy Chanukah, and happy solstice too. That's also part of what we're celebrating, even if most of us grew up hearing that we were celebrating the victory of religious freedom over oppression. Which, by the way, is a really American way of interpreting this holiday. And depending on where Jews have lived, we've celebrated it in ways that emphasize messages that grow out of our own context. That's basically how all culture works. But it's especially apparent to us with Chanukah, because it's a newer holiday with a better documented story attached to it than is the case with some of our other holidays. Let's look at that documentation to dispense with some of the more obviously problematic elements of this holiday. There was no magical cruise of oil. Magical oil is not a real thing. This part of the tale, the magical oil, came centuries after this holiday was created. It was an invention of the rabbis, probably in Babylon, many hundreds of years after the Maccabees, that they employed to downplay admiration for the militarism of the Maccabean revolt and to play up the role of God's miraculous gift of victory in that war. Well, now, religious miracles are often given credit for this worldly successes. But in this case, the rabbis had a pretty good reason. Since the days of those Maccabees, the hundreds of years that passed between them and the Maccabees, the Jews had been not winning, a lot of wars. In fact, they'd been losing particularly badly. Mostly they had lost to Rome. So telling Jews that the Maccabees' victory was a miracle, with the special miracle oil story to back it all up, was probably a good way of ensuring that Jewish uprisings were kept to the bare minimum. In any case, Chanukah was a minor holiday on the liturgical calendar, and the rabbis made good and sure that it would stay that way. But the ancient rabbi spin on the holiday was not the final spin. Those of you familiar with Israeli secular culture might have noticed that there are an awful lot of things in Israel named after the Maccabees. A lot of sports teams, for example, use the name. These and other similar heroicizations of the Maccabees were put to use by the secular left-leaning Zionists beginning in the early 20th century. If the ancient rabbis wanted to award Greco-Assyrians in the 2nd century BCE with all the points for the victory, well, these Zionists, they wanted to give all the credit to the Maccabees, of course. The Israeli take on Chanukah is still around. The custom of naming things that are sports-related is still especially observed. We have not just sports teams, but the Maccabiah games, both at JCCs and in Israel every 4 years, really a take on the Olympics, which the Maccabees so opposed as part of the competing Hellenistic Greek culture. Kind of ironic, isn't it? Well, that was the Israeli spin, to turn the Maccabees into proto-Zionists. Americans spun it too, but, in our good capitalist way, we spun it towards commerce. Here, Chanukah took the turn of a blue and white Christmas. My newsletter commentary this week, and you can also find it in Humanistic Judaism, the issue that was just released as a PDF, has a little article in it called Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmaka. And there I talk about the syncretism, that means religious mixture, that's occurred with Christmas and Chanukah here in America. As a humanistic Jew, of course, I'm completely comfortable with this, but not so much my conventional colleagues who, for many years, spent a lot of energy yelling, and I guess they still do, about how Chanukah is not the Jewish Christmas. Well, as everybody who knows me has heard me say at this time of year, it really is. Well, we've talked about how the Israelis and most Americans do it. Do secular humanistic Jews have our own spin on the holiday? Well, loving history as we do, we looked at the documentation too, the first book of Maccabees, other sources, Josephus, and we acquainted ourselves with the reality that the Maccabean revolt was pretty much a civil war between Hellenized Jews, that means Jews who partook in Greek culture and ways of thinking and looking at the world, vaguely, but not, of course, completely analogous to secular Jews today. Anyway, a war between them and religious zealots, that is to say, the Maccabees, who were basically a bunch of Taliban-like fanatics. Our identification with the Hellenizing Jews, also known to Jewish history as the bad guys, came through their embrace of Greek ideas like philosophy and the arts. What more do we need to see them in a positive light? But they were also cosmopolitan. They were open to their version of secular culture, Hellenistic influences, and they seem just to have been more like our kind of people. But our spin doesn't entirely work either, because they weren't the good guys that we'd like them to be. Not really. And that's because the war was not so much a clear-cut battle between fundamentalist Jewish Maccabees on one side and cosmopolitan Jewish Hellenizers on the other. Like many disputes, it was really about power and fortune. In any case, the bottom line is that the humanistic Jewish desire to identify with the Hellenizers does not stand up to the test of history either. Nevertheless, given my choice, if I found myself in a time machine going back there, I think it's pretty likely that I would side with them rather than the Maccabees with their cries of, "All who is for the Lord, follow us." Those pious Maccabees, who actually violated all kinds of Jewish laws and customs after they won, became known to history as the leaders of the Hasmonean dynasty. That was their family name. They went on to rule quite viciously, invading their neighbors, including imposing forcible conversions on them, circumcision and all. Their leaders were also corrupt, and it was really not more than 100 years or so before the corruption led to the downfall of their dynasty, and ultimately the Romans entered the scene around 63 BCE. As for those Hellenizers, well, we're going to give them credit for something. They're the reason that Chanukah starts on the 25th day of the month of Kislev. We know this from Jewish sources. They remembered that date as the one on which the Hellenistic Jews, who were briefly in charge of the temple, remember power and fortune, erected a statue of Zeus there. He was for them a symbol of universal power, not really a challenger to Yahweh, just a different way of looking at the notion that today theists might describe as, well, don't we all have one God, really? The 25th of Kislev was sort of a parallel to an important Greek winter solstice holiday that they were undoubtedly celebrating, called Dionysia, one that seems to have been very, very popular with Jews everywhere in that region. And that, of course, raises the question of, okay, they set the date by observing Dionysia and putting up the Zeus in the 25th thereabouts. Well, why did the Maccabees, who won the war, hold on to that date to celebrate their victory? Well, my guess is that it was probably because it was so popular that they were trying to both hold on to that holiday and erase its Hellenistic associations by giving their own victory as the reason for celebrating it. So, does this sound familiar? It should. It's well known that Christians did the same thing with the Roman solstice, that they took that holiday, Saturnalia, and changed its name, declaring it to be Jesus' birthday. But Jesus was no more the reason for this season than the Maccabees' victory was. The reason for this season is, open our science books, axial tilt. We have a winter solstice. And in the end, a solstice holiday is a solstice holiday, no matter what story you attach to it. Dionysia and Saturnalia were far from the only ones. There are solstice festivals of light all over the world. That's why as Christianity moved into Europe, it soaked up pagan lighted trees and Yule logs and mythical gift-giving elves. It's also why when Chanukah moved to America, it was transformed into a blue and white version of the green and red Christmas. In America, where we excel at mixing up all kinds of cultures, it's not entirely incorrect to think of it, as I've described it, as one big Christmaka celebration. Even when Chanukah comes earlier, doesn't it really tend to linger on until the Christmas holiday is over? Look, if you as a humanistic Jew are inspired by the story of the Maccabees or the story of the Hellenistic Jews or any of the other things that come into the mix and the spin of Chanukah, well, celebrate it that way. But honestly, I for one find that all very uninspiring. I will, however, give the Hellenists a little bit of credit here, since they're the ones who ultimately linked the Festival of Lights to Chanukah. And so I'll leave you with this on my little commentary tonight. Happy Christmaka. Happy Saturnalia. Merry Dionysia. Did they say that? Happy Yule, whatever it is. And for us, our connection to Jewishness and the Jewish experience, I say Chag Chanukah Sameach. Have a very happy, happy Chanukah.
סוף 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 חנוכה הוא חג טוב חנוכה הוא חג טוב סביבון סוף 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 סוב נא כל וכל ייגמר ואז ייפול סוב נא כל וכל ייגמר ואז ייפול סביבון סוף 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 חנוכה הוא חג טוב חנוכה הוא חג טוב סביבון סוף 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 סוב נא כל וכל ייגמר ואז ייפול סוב נא כל וכל ייגמר ואז ייפול סביבון סוף 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 חנוכה הוא חג טוב חנוכה הוא חג טוב סביבון סוף 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 סוב נא כל וכל ייגמר ואז ייפול סוב נא כל וכל ייגמר ואז ייפול סביבון סוף 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 חנוכה הוא חג טוב חנוכה הוא חג טוב סביבון סוף 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 סוב נא כל וכל ייגמר ואז ייפול סוב נא כל וכל ייגמר ואז ייפול.
Increasing light. To do our daily part to increase light in our world, we must remember that one candle alone is a small thing. One person alone is a small thing. One nation alone is also a small thing. Remembering this, we must recognize something much more than our indispensability to others. We must also remember their indispensability to us. We cannot hope, not as individuals, not as nations, to reach our highest capabilities until we help those around us to reach theirs. To be strong, we must serve. The holiday lights that we kindle in our homes and in our hearts form a bridge of light from our ideals to the radiant spirit of free people. In this spirit, we celebrate this festival of Chanukah, our festival of lights, wherein the candle that gives its light to the others is called the servant candle. We too are strongest when we serve. We seek to serve the cause of peace. And in that spirit, we continue with Naaseh Shalom.
Shalom,
In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts to all those who need our love and support, those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight, we extend our well wishes to these members of our community and their loved ones, to Diana Lieberman, Deborah Luria, C.C. Stone, Julie Eliason, Karen Tremper-Harris, Myron Tink, Peter Schweitzer, and Deb Drennan. May all who suffer know that they are not alone. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery, a refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits. We continue now with Makom HaKoach. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight, our community continues to mourn the recent deaths of Mike Beltzman and Priscilla Molnar, and we observe the yahrzeits of Ben Biederman, Rose Bowman, Lemon Grace Citron, Sadie Cohen, Harry Cohen, Bernard Davis, Sylvia DeRoven, Betty Evans, Joel Foreman, Dorothy Frank, Ida Gus, Rose Kadish, Ben Kresh, Harold Levine, Seymour Lipton, Gertrude Pinkney, Irving Radner, Arthur Rice, Helen Rice, and Frida Solomon. The holidays can be a very difficult time to be without our loved ones. I hope that warm memories of these people will bring those who mourn them a sense of comfort at this time as they think about their loss. Well, that's it tonight. I wish everyone a happy Chanukah. Don't forget, we members of the congregation will be on Zoom every night from here on to the last night of Chanukah. So at 6 o'clock, join us on Zoom. The link's in the newsletter. I'll try to send out a reminder again so that you'll have the link handier. We had a wonderful gathering last night. I have to say, I loved it. I think we'll try doing this even after Chanukah is over, though we'll certainly have in-person gatherings then too. Super Supper is tomorrow, and that's always been a great time to come together. I missed that opportunity, but I will tell you this, all the soup sold out. So from the point of view of its purpose, which is not just to bring us together, but to finance our winter mitzvah and the things that we try to do for this community, it was a complete success. And I congratulate our Social Justice Committee, particularly Audrey Pleasant, who organizes this each year. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Chanukah Sameach. We will now conclude with kind of a humanistic take on Ma'oz Tzur, the famous Chanukah song. We'll see you soon, everybody. Good night.
Cold and darkness closing in, bring to mind oppression. In our hands we hold the power of our own redemption. The light of the menorah, casting forth its aura, filling us with strength and hope, a world ablaze with freedom. Filling us with strength and hope, a world ablaze with freedom. Children of the human race, whether free or fettered, wake the echoes of your songs where you may be scattered. Yours the message cheering that the time is nearing, which will see all people free, tyranny defeated, which will see all people free, tyranny defeated.